Hi guys, thanks a lot for spending the time. It's kind of a rainy evening here out in Bangalore. I don't know how many of you are there in Bangalore. Ideally, we would love to do this in person, where you could have appreciated my dressing sense in person. I'm trying to look all distinguished for all of you right now, as you see. At least the visible part of you see, but let's get going with the meat of why you all are here. Uh, I'm just going to share my screen and present something that I'm going to essentially walk you through. So hopefully you guys are able to see the deck. The way this works is I'll perhaps be a little blind, uh, but yeah, you should be able to see the deck. Super. Okay, so like Ruchi said, thanks Ruchi for setting the stage. Really, the idea here is that all of you, I mean, we're not going to go through what we're not going to do on this session is, talk about what AA is and how it is kind of useful for this country and all of that. I mean, there's been enough of that said. This is a how to session. We've probably done bits and pieces of this with several of you. Now there are many more. The community is going stronger. We thought we'll just figure out a common way. And so for the next 1 hour, this is what we'll do. It's there's no way I can make this super entertaining and interesting. It's a presentation, right? So you've got to live with it, and it's kind of some parts of it are heavy in content and so on and so forth. So we'll try and break the monotony a little bit by breaking it up into 3 parts, because this really is meant to be an open house, which means you have questions and we answer. So Mahesh, who's also the co-host, will actually be watching the Q&A, tab very closely. And what we will do is, at 3 distinct, times, I will just pause at logical points, and we will just kind of go through the questions. There's a neat way for the questions to be put up onto screen. We'll try and address those, and we'll leave it to Mahesh's judgment to figure out if he needs to invite one or more of you up onto stage. If the question is particularly interesting or unclear, he may do that, and then you can speak about it as well, right? Hopefully, that'll work. Just as I was working through this deck today, this came in my WhatsApp, just about a couple of hours ago, and I thought that could be the joke of the day. But there is a little bit of this is of course somewhat dark humor, but there are 2 messages I took out. One, of course, is that everybody is digital, including citizens of all kinds, right? Including the masked ones that you see here, masked in the wrong sense of the word. But the other interesting part of it is that while we'll talk about how this is all wonderful and all of that, perhaps looking at how regulatory agencies tend to look at many of these things, and in the ecosystem, we need to keep that view very strong in everything we do, and especially as technology service providers, security is really going to be the next big thing, as we all know. So I think there are multiple messages, but that apart, really at the end of this whole deck, we are just asking you or talking to you about 5 things. So I thought, why not just put my last slide first? We've got decent numbers of folks who've signed up for this. Hopefully after this, the numbers will stay. But essentially, this is the sum and substance of what we're here to speak about. We're going to speak about how becoming a TSP member of the Sahmati Alliance, by joining the alliance formally, and we'll walk through what that means, is really what we'd like you to do. So far, for the last couple of years, Sahmati has operated on a self-funded basis. We're obviously incubated by iSpirit. They've been a phenomenal support. But I think it's time now where we become a member-driven organization, and you'll see how we'd like to make it absolutely easy for all kinds of and all sizes of companies to have an equal voice. So a very nominal membership fee is what we want to roll out this year on a 6-month prorated basis. We'll speak about how we'd really love the community, which is all of you, to contribute to Sahmati programs, either by part sponsoring it and or volunteering. We'll speak a little bit about that. And of course, the bulk of what we will speak about is how becoming a member helps you shape both the A ecosystem future as well as the future of your own business. And that's really what we are, right? So Mahesh tells me we've got about 86 people right now. Usually, when we speak money, that's like the sum and substance. So I hope that 86 will grow to 90 and won't drop to, 68 or whatever, right? All right, super. So the rest of this is essentially going to be into 3 parts, broken down into 3 parts. Many of you, of course, may know about Sahmati, but we ourselves have been improving how we communicate who we are. And one of the key things is, as technology service providers and as kind of partners to several entities, including your customers, but also to the alliance, knowing who or what Sahmati is and why we exist is perhaps important for you to also communicate outside. So that's part 1. We'll take a short break, find out if there are any questions. Mahesh will help us, and we'll get through that. Then we get into the meat of the whole discussion, which is what's in it for me, right? That is, what's in it for you. What are the benefits? What are the obligations for TSPs to become members, right, of Sahmati? And finally, we'll kind of make it all come together in terms of what's in it for your customers, right? How do you really become a force multiplier to FIUs, FIPs, and even AAs that you may be serving? Public standards have been in existence for a few years now across domains, and a classic pattern of how institutional architecture seems to have worked is kind of a separation between market participants, the standards body, and bodies that are in between. One of the very widely known examples is the Wi-Fi Alliance, where IEEE is the standards body, right, for the Wi-Fi standard. And you've got market participants which are very heterogeneous in nature. You've got hardware manufacturers, software, application builders, etc. And then you've got Wi-Fi Alliance, which tries to bring together the market to create, a code of conduct, and also complements the standards body's efforts in evolving the standards, administering it, and so on and so forth. So Sahmati, pretty much, I think it's a very good analogy for where we are today. So we've got Rebit, which is a wholly owned subsidiary, right? So while RBI is, of course, the ultimate standards body in terms of market directions, the technical standards today are owned by the IT subsidiary, which is Rebit. We've got heterogeneous market participants. You know that this is not just for banks and by banks. This extends to all kinds of financial regulated entities. So it's very heterogeneous, and therefore there's a need for an industry alliance that will help drive this. That's like an elevator pitch for who we are. And therefore the structure of this alliance is, A, it's not for profit, with a 3-point charter: drive adoption, orchestrate, which is bring together codes of conduct which create health in the ecosystem through a variety of means. We'll speak about all of those. And finally, propagate discussions for collective innovation and essentially push the envelope forward. Now, the interesting thing for us as Sahmati is that, obviously, and for all of you as technology service providers, is that for you the market is really about varieties of very heterogeneous ecosystem members. And so as an alliance, as we grow, our strength really is in dealing with heterogeneity and bringing together members of all kinds, sizes, regulatory charters, and also roles. There are people who are kind of FIPs and FIUs. There are people who will be FIUs, till FIP implementation is cast in stone from a practical implementation standpoint. So various kinds of, very curious personas exist. And so that led us also to organize ourselves, saying, how do we ensure that, as this body, we are inclusive, we are participative, and we are essentially, fully and completely member driven, and there's no capture of governance, right? So there are three principles really. uh, the first is we really want to be member driven, right? And who's a member? A member of Sahmati is any entity that has, adopted the AI ecosystem into its business and wishes to have a voice in the governance of the alliance. B, we have no investors, and we have no donors either. So Sahmati's funding needs for all the programs that we've been doing and which we will hopefully accelerate will be met by membership fees and by sponsorships. I'll speak about what sponsorship means. It's not just sponsoring an event and putting up a logo there. It's a little different. I'll come to that a little later. But there are, nobody but members really will be treated as owners, which brings us therefore to how is this ownership translated in terms of voice. So the governance is going to be through a three-tiered structure, and it's going to be independent of, who's paid how much. It is entirely, the attempt will be to ensure that there is equal representation, and we've got good voices from all quarters, regardless of what they do in the ecosystem and how much of it they do. The governance structure, therefore, rolls up into a governing council, but the three-tiered structure is like this. Anybody who becomes a member forms part of what's called the member base, right? Which is the topmost layer on this slide. Members are invited to join or form steering committees, and of course there'll be a separate body of knowledge we'll create in terms of some principles, but the idea is for this to be very self-organizing. And then steering committees. So steering committees are essentially meant to represent homogeneous sections within the overall structure. So for TSPs, there will be a steering committee. Will we need further dissection of steering committees amongst all of you as we go forward? Time will tell. We will see. But the idea is that steering committees are speaking about issues or ideas that are relevant to their own sector, and the alliance has a common forum to speak to them. And then steering committees nominate, typically well-respected senior, typically CXO level person to the governing council. The governing council broadly is broken into two halves. One is experts from the industry that Sahmati itself invites. So for this year, we've invited 5 experts that we think will be most effective for our goals for the next 12 to 18 months. And as you can see, they are essentially from some of the biggest banking, institutions in the country, because obviously we need to build far more advocacy in the banking sector, and who else but the early adopter banks to do that. They represent risk, innovation, scale, and they also represent cross-sectoral participation. So we've got Mr. Srinivas Jain, who's the ED of SBI Mutual Fund. We've got Mr. Shashi Krishnan, who's the CEO of NPS Trust. Because one of the goals for Sahmati is to start opening up this into other sectors. And then from the steering committees, we've had the AA steering committee really active for, ever since this ecosystem was born and Sahmati was born. So the AAs have nominated Mr. Krishna Prasad, or KP as is popularly known, who's the CEO of One Money, to essentially represent them on the governing council. And essentially, as we now roll up our efforts, or roll out our efforts at creating more steering committees, we will have more nominees from each of the other steering committees here, right? We also have a very powerful advisory council, which is to do with 3 kinds of expertises. One is we have Mr. Gandhi, who's the deputy governor of RBI. We have Mr. Pramod Rao, who's the group legal head of ICICI and gives us a lot of legal and regulatory advice. And then we have Mr. Pramod Verma, who's the chief architect of India Stack and several things to do with multiple ecosystems in India. He sits on the board of NPCI and several other organizations, which works very well for us. Right? And of course, we've got Mahesh, we've got Siddharth in the governing council, who are the co-founders of Sahmati when iSpirit incubated, and they were the volunteers who kind of co-founded this, right? So that is the governance side of it. Now, all of this is for what? All of this ultimately is not for Sahmati. It is for Sahmati to offer services to members. And so the governing council is expected to have oversight over the offerings also that Sahmati will offer, such that it plays its role well. And the way we look at what we do, what we've been doing, and what we wish to do better is under these 4 buckets. The first is advocacy and education. That's perhaps obvious. Second is collaboration and fair conduct. This is where I think bulk of our efforts will be, and bulk of your efforts as members of Sahmati as an alliance. All of us will probably spend a lot of time in. We'll speak in detail about all of these as during the rest of the deck. Then there is what we call common infrastructure that is being crowdsourced, built, hosted, funded by Sahmati now, etc., which is meant to ensure that the underlying principles of interoperability and reciprocity and all of those are truly codified through a techno-legal set of assets, right? So there's technical assets, there's legal assets, all of that is common infrastructure offered to the ecosystem. And finally, providing technical guarantees through certification. We'll speak about that. Many of you may have many questions around this. I promise I'll deal with this in detail, perhaps during the Q&A section. But this is essentially one of the services which really is critical for all of this to work seamlessly for citizens, right? And we'll speak about the pushes and pulls of this whole topic. That's who we are. I think, Mahesh, it's a good time for us now to see if there are questions, and if we should kind of pause here and take each of these questions one by one.
Most of it have been answered by me already on the thing. But I think you do have one which is the technical question. I will include it here. I will display it.
Pull it up, yeah.
From Madhu of TransUnion.
Yeah, so while this forum is meant really for while figuring out what can TSPs do, one of the things is that we have a GitHub and Discord community now live, where really I request Madhu that please use this opportunity. I know you probably don't know this, but at the end of it, you will have those links where you can join the community and start. This is not an easy topic to answer in a short paragraph. It is, like many things in the ecosystem, version control at the standards level is a topic to be discussed. Today we are at 1.12, which the early adopters have essentially agreed to be the baseline that everybody will be on, and everybody is on 1.12. Now, as new non-breaking changes come out, like there's a 1.13, which is semantic versioning wise is a bug fix, right? And there'll probably be in sometime in the future a 1.2, which could be a minor version change. The backward and forward compatibility of different implementations and guaranteeing that they work across each other is indeed a problem that I don't think there's been a lot of work. I think one of the working groups that we've had so far, we've created a version control policy, and that's been shared with Rebit as well, but it still needs ironing out. So we should take this up as a separate working group. I don't think I can do justice to that in this forum.
Second question
What are the
has been shared.
regulations? Sure, specifically for TSPs and is the certification process. Thanks, Ram. So there is no regulation. So when we speak regulation, we speak RBI REBIT. There is nothing to do with technology service providers who can or who cannot be from RBI REBIT. So it's an open market. Anybody can be a technology service provider. Sahmati, what does it offer TSPs? Well, that's the whole point. We, yes and no. I mean, hold your horses a little bit. The next section will speak about a concept of an intermediate certified entity, which is really a benefit that TSPs can get from the empanel certifiers that Sahmati has brought on board. And that benefit can actually pass on to the FIUs who are your customers. So we'll speak about that. But again, one point I'd like to make clear, which will hopefully be clear as I go through. The idea is for Sahmati to never bring in any gating mechanisms for anybody. Right? There's no concept of compliance from the perspective of Sahmati. We at this stage, the idea is that we put out policies which we believe are useful for the citizen. I mean, first and foremost, and then coming backwards from there for participants. And then, if all of you buy into the logic, then you buy into the processes required for it, which is becoming certified, etc., etc. So that's the idea. Today, what we started with our listing service was actually a very open service, and many of you are listed already. The idea, I know Ram Wonderland itself is listed. It's a simple service of making information available without really doing any kind of due diligence. As we now grow, we probably have to become a little more responsible, but it will not be, anything fundamentally significant by saying you have to do A, B, C, D, only then you will kind of be listed. It will be very open, and everything that we offer will only be recommendations and optional features for you to use or not use. That's essentially. Saurabh is asking, is there an agreed monetization plan interchange for FIPs, AAs, and TSPs? Pricing by definition, both from RBI's viewpoint and from our viewpoint, is entirely market-led. So the FIU AA contracts are entirely today led by how AAs have discovered their own pricing models. Of course, there is a need for, as the alliance, to educate on what the typical templates are or models are, but the actual value is entirely driven by the market, and that's how it will be between FIUs and AAs. Between AAs and FIPs, or the whole concept of FIPs costs getting defrayed, that's a topic that's part of a working group actually that started a few months ago. Some of the largest banks are involved. We are hoping that within October, November, the industry, starting with the banks, will probably reach some kind of an agreement on how they look at cost compensation for themselves. So between the AAs and the FIPs, hopefully there will be an industry kind of a standard that will emerge. But early days, there's been a lot of work. There's been a basic proposal that the AAs have put out, and banks like SBI, etc., are evaluating it. They're working with all of them to bring it to closure. So watch this space.
That's it for now.
Super. So let me now continue on to the second part of what we wanted to discuss. I hope we're doing okay on time. Which is, okay, so TSPs as members, right? What do you get? And, why should you be a member? What's it for you? What happens if you are not a member, right? I think these are the two questions which we'll try and address. And the template I'll follow is essentially drill down into a bunch of offerings that we believe the Alliance, as Sahmati, and as people who are involved in this can
Just
offer.
a minute, Vamsi. No. See, I mean, if you want, you all can expand your screen. If you want to see the full table, I just want to tell them. Go ahead, Vamsi.
Yeah. Right. So essentially, we will drill down into each of those buckets. And, we've tried to look at it from the TSP's hat to say, what's in it for me? What do I get, from Sahmati by being part of the Alliance? So if you look at education, there are three ways in which we are seeing that all of us will learn about. One is, Sahmati itself, by dint of having done this for 2-3 years, all of us have a certain amount of resident domain knowledge, and that's offered as a service. So there are several awareness workshops that are done, which will continue to be free for everybody. And as and when we do workshops, I think we've done close to about 50 workshops in the last couple of years. We will accelerate it, and everybody can participate. By the way, whatever I'm showing now as services, or as the membership fee, etc., is only for TSPs. Please do not misconstrue that while there will be huge amount of similarity in terms of services, we are yet to roll out the membership fee for FIUs and FIPs and As. We will probably do that within the next 15 days. But whatever you are seeing now is only for you, right, in terms of your role as TSPs. So workshops, there will be three kinds. There will be general purpose awareness workshops, and then there will be Sahmati being invited to participate in your workshops. We expect that many of you as TSPs will conduct workshops. We've already been part of some of those workshops. Increasingly, those services will be for member TSPs only and not open to all. And then there are a lot of sessions that we are asked to conduct, education sessions about, whether it's technology, whether it is policy, whether it is legal terms, etc. Those also we will perforce have to prioritize member TSPs demands over the open to all. In fact, at some point in time, it will not be open to all. Then there will be master classes. Again, there will be three kinds. One is public events, the one that, for example, was conducted by iSpirit and Sahmati on September 2nd. Before that, we've had hackathons, we've had several other such events. We will continue to conduct those, and those will be open to all. But we wish to conduct themed events which will be exclusive to members. You will see a couple of those hopefully getting rolled out with a decent cadence over the next 4 to 8 weeks. For example, we've spoken to some of you for months about this. We do propose to conduct demo days where we will bring in, as a TSP, obviously one of the biggest things that you need is a platform to talk about, your own offering and have an audience that comes and listens to you, right? FIPs, FIUs, etc. As Sahmati, because we are in that position where we can bring together different folks, that's a service offering that we'll offer. A demo days kind of cadence to the members, right? To TSP members. And then as members, you yourselves may conduct workshops. You may feel the need for Sahmati to participate, speak about it. Again, that will be for member workshops only, not open to all. Right? Thirdly, learning from the community itself. We have discussion forums. In fact, I'll speak about how we are launching a new discussion forum on Discord and tech discussion forum on GitHub, and that will be open to all, right? But our own emailing list, and we will now periodically send out newsletters. We'll send out outputs of working groups, etc. That will of course be for members only, and our participation in the discussion forums of members. Several members have WhatsApp channels, Slack channels, perhaps even Discord channels. So our participation in those and and contributing to all of those discussions will also be a member TSPs only offering. Right? So this is on the first pillar. The second one is essentially about the collaboration and fair conduct pillar, right? Which essentially is about having discussion forums that we manage as community managers. We moderate, we mediate, and we also goad towards a goal. Breaking this up into three classes. The first two classes are tech discussion forums. Like I said, GitHub code repositories for both regulatory standards, market guidelines, open to all, but participation in tech working groups. So a lot of these, like Madhu spoke about version control. I mean, there are zillions of topics which we really need to kind of shape and come up with recommendations of guidelines which will be helpful to you as a business, to your customers, and to the ecosystem. So the opportunity to do that will be for Sahmati members. And any implementation assistance, we've done a lot of it in the last, obviously, 9-12 months, where we participated in weekly calls with several members along with TSPs. Increasingly, as this grows to hundreds, we obviously cannot do it on demand with everybody. So the implementation assistance will be a member offering only, right? Similarly, on the business side, discussion forums on Discord for use cases, pricing, roadmap, etc. But participation in working groups and on-demand discussions with Sahmati on various things will effectively be a members only offering. Of course, access to all of the discussion forums will always continue to be open to everybody, right? This is how our GitHub thing looks like. Some of you, the early adopters probably know this. We have some phenomenal volunteers right now behind all of this, and volunteering is a very, very important, skill that we need. Please do visit github.com/Sahmati. Ask all of your tech teams to visit. Let's make this really vibrant. And you will find 6 different repositories there. All collaboration should shift there. And I think when we have the industry tech folks collaborating in one place, magic can happen. And I think we can really shape, or influence the pipeline of all of these recommendations going back to the standards body, right? Which is Rebate or RBA or what have you, right? Likewise, we've just about, set up the Discord server. One of the good things about a Discord server is I have become cool at home. Last few days, I keep saying Discord. My 11-year-old looks at me and says, "What are you doing on Discord?" Right? So that's one of the nice things that's happened to me personally, coming onto Discord. But essentially, thanks to our volunteers who are much more savvy, we believe, this will hopefully become the community for everybody, not just the tech folks, but also the business folks. We also want to offer this as the platform for even the steering committees, for the working groups. So essentially, one place, a watering hole where the entire community comes in, and it'll be open to all. But obviously, steering committee discussion groups will be by invite only to members who are on the steering committee. Working groups will be by invite only who are members overall, and so on and so forth, right? So please do visit sahmati.org.in/community, and that will get you there, right? The third and perhaps biggest point about all of this, about membership, is voice and influencing the ecosystem. And we believe several of you, in fact, all of you, would like to be at your own, in your own areas, influence how you want this ecosystem to shape up. It's a great opportunity because not everything is being handed down by somebody sitting somewhere in Mumbai and saying that this is how the ecosystem has to flourish, right? We have an opportunity, at least for now, where the industry can shape policies, and we'll figure out a way of feeding that back to RBI and Rebate, and we'll see how quickly that cadence can be built. So what will be open to all, we believe today, is the outcomes of, let's say, governing council meetings that happen once a quarter, key decisions that the alliance takes, which will influence all of us, will be public, right? We will put it up on our members page or our members portal. We've just launched a page. I'll come to that towards the end of the discussion, and that'll be open to all. But only members will be invited to what we propose to conduct as an annual general meeting, right? And we'll start with annual. We may increase the cadence to, biannual. We will see. And then member-based participants will have the opportunity to join or form steering committees, right? And then steering committees will essentially nominate, like I said, to the governing council. So we do want, by October 15th, we do want all of you to sign up to be members. And then we do want to initiate the discussion for the TSP steering committee to be formed. And then by the end of this month, we do want the representative from all of you, to be nominated to the GC. And the GC nominations are they rotate. So this is not a position of vanity. It is a position of responsibility, and it is something that we expect all of you will have, the maturity to kind of figure out how this structure, the steering committee and the nominee, work in tandem. I believe it is working. It will work well. And the AA steering committee has just about started, its operations as a self-functioning steering committee on its own, right? So this is what members get in terms of the fair conduct and collaboration, voice in the ecosystem. Right? The third pillar is the common infrastructure. Now, what we've taken a stance, and we believe that's the right thing to do, is we are in an open standards ecosystem, right? There is no lock-in, and therefore any infrastructure that is built should not also suffer from lock-in. So for TSPs, what is the relevant infrastructure? One is there's something called a central registry, right? There'll be several questions we'll take. The central registry is a very critical component of the architecture. It was part of the original conception of the regulatory architecture from Revit itself. But for various reasons, the central registry is not built or hosted by the regulatory or a statutory body, right? And hence, Sahmati, took that up, and today we run the central registry. Phenomenal volunteers from, I hope you are there in the audience today, have actually built this out, right? A couple of years ago, because they said this is necessary. So the UAT environment obviously is the only relevant environment for TSPs that's open to all, right? There is a token issuance service, again, as a common service. I'll not go into the details, that's open to all. There is a certification framework test plan, which is essentially a bunch of test scenarios contributed by the earliest certifier who was empaneled. That's open to all. And more certifiers that have come in now, as and when they improve that, it will continue to remain an open asset. There is an open source library for encryption, decryption that's already open to all. And all the market guidelines that are created by members, the tech working groups, once it is signed off by the tech working group and accepted and reviewed by everybody, that will again be an open asset, right? So everybody will have access. So the idea is, if you need any of these, you write to services@sahmati.org.in, and our team, again, we are a team of part full-timers and full part-timers, right? They will respond with a reasonable SLA of 24 hours to this email and help you get access to the UAT registry, etc., etc. Again, please remember that any sessions that you need with respect to understanding all of these, etc., etc., if our documentation, which will also be open, is not doing the job, you will find that we will not be able to perhaps support you as well as we could in the last few months, because now we expect a lot of members to have that priority, right? But you will have access to all documentation, you'll have access to all the UAT environments, right? So that's on the common infra. As far as the basic tech is concerned. Now, as far as multi-party common infra is concerned, and I'll mention what that means. There are pieces of common infra that some of this have been built and are about to be rolled out. Some will be built. If you look at a 30, 60, 90-day plan, you will see most of these coming out. There will be certain business common resources, like an industry dashboard, for example, which will again be open to all. Everybody, including the media, for example, will need info about what's happening in the industry. How many FIPs are there, how many FIUs are there, what's the transaction volumes, etc. But we do propose, these are problems that we see have surfaced, where there is a need for a common ecosystem UAT platform. This is at this stage a wish, and I hope, and the purpose of stating this is actually an act of commitment, because we really don't have visibility into timelines or costs involved in doing this, or the effort involved. But we want to do this, which is build a common ecosystem UAT platform where UAT environments of all the FIPs are linked to UAT environments of the AAs and linked to UAT environments of FIUs. So today the ecosystem suffers from not having access to, quote unquote real but UAT data, right? It is essentially sandbox environments of the AAs, and we know there's a problem. The AAs themselves have said this is a problem. So we'd like to build, again, this is a multi-party thing, and hence Sahmati perhaps is best placed to kind of drive this, build that out. Then to drive adoption and amongst citizens and consumers, and basically give a platform for AA-enabled applications to essentially be promoted, we may, and this is an idea that we borrowed from Open Banking UK, OBIE, there is an app store. And so all of you that build for your customers or build demo applications, this will be, think of it as a good platform for your potential customers to discover your applications. We will create a nice showreel for all of your applications to be promoted. So it's part of the promotion services. So these two services will be restricted to TSPs who are members. and not open to all. And then there is legal common infrastructure, specifically a dispute management, an automated dispute resolution framework, right? And the framework has two parts to it. It has a legal, legalese, English, which is codified in something called participation terms. Now, those participation terms are not relevant to TSPs. Those are today relevant to, your customers, which is FIUs, FIPs, AAs, because they are the real ones that the citizen is dealing with, right? So the participation terms, are relevant to them alone. But those participation terms speak about certain tech infra, which is that there will be APIs that we will have at an ecosystem level, complementing the open standards. Again, it will be an open standard which will enable automated dispute resolution and which will enable online dispute resolution. Right? I may not be able to do justice to this flowchart here, and therefore I strongly recommend that you please visit sahmati.org.in/ODR, where there is an article, and our advisor Pramod Rao has done a great job recently authoring on how this whole framework will work. He's pretty much the brains behind how this will work. But if you look at the top box, the first box, which says supported by Sahmati, the idea is that there is an automated dispute resolution, which is on the lines of what RBI has been promoting even in payments early this year, which will try and automate resolution for tech type disputes, right? Where adjudication, mediation, conciliation, all of those, legal judgments are perhaps not necessary. But because there are multiple parties involved, you need some central place where data is collected and some business rules are built to try and come up with a tech decision. And several of the problems that we will actually encounter, I believe, will be of that nature, right? So, with the help of volunteers from iSpirit and Sahmati now, and with Pramod's help, we are now beginning to build, an automated dispute resolution mechanism. Our goal is that within 60, 90 days, we should definitely roll this out in some shape and form, because that's about the time when scale will start hitting, perhaps even earlier. There is a sense of urgency. And therefore, these APIs will again be open APIs and everybody will have access, right? But as we come up with UAT environments for those, and as we come up with more services around those, we may find that some of those will only be accessible to member TSPs, right? So that's about common infrastructure, right? And then last but not the least is the bucket called certification services. This is perhaps the biggest and most interesting topic. And, before we go to the third section, this is what is a good kind of segue and a summary. So there's been a lot of commentary around certification, right? I'm sure as TSPs, you see a lot of questions coming back from FIUs as to what is this, why is this required, and who mandates that this be done. Please visit our website. I'll flash it shortly, where we've tried to expand, and this is fresh off the oven, just about 24, 48 hours ago. We've added more content, which we believe does more justice than what we had earlier in explaining the benefit of it. It is wrong framing to look at it as a mandate. It is right framing to look at it as perhaps necessary if you wear your citizen's hat, right? And by that, what we mean is anything can go wrong. Just by having a standard doesn't guarantee that everybody's interpreted the standard in the same way. And several of you who've been in this for the last couple of years have seen the pain, whether it was initial Diffie-Hellman interoperability issues or error codes and trying to come together on what scenarios should result in which error codes. The spec did not answer those, right, automatically. It needed collaboration, it needed decisions, right? And that led to the genesis of a common test plan, and that then led to the need for a test toolkit, which the empanel certifiers have built, so that the whole process can be self-serve, right? Where somebody can essentially run it and get certified, and that becomes a technical guarantee that entity provides to the rest of the ecosystem, saying, look, I've done what I think I should be doing, and this is as per what all of you expect. So we will not have disputes, grievances of a tech nature, hopefully, right? That's the idea. One of the key points has been, how do we simplify this? How do we make this, non-locked in a sense, right? Because on the one hand, you need people with expertise who are the empanel certifiers and who've also invested in building automation. On the other hand, you can't have, many empaneled certifiers because it needs a certain kind of expertise. If you look at the current empaneled certifiers, all of them come from the background of certification, right? They're all certifiers in other domains, STQC certified, certain empaneled, and so on and so forth, right? So what we now believe is a great idea, is all of you can essentially be what's called an intermediate certified entity. And what that means is that you become the single point of contact for your customer by doing three things. One, you pre-certify your software by entering into an arrangement with any of the three empaneled certifiers, right? Any or more, it's up to you, right? So they issue a certificate actually to you as an intermediate certified entity. So that becomes a good, a good symbol of your readiness even to your customers. Second, you enter into a pre-negotiated certification rate with one or more of those certifiers, where you say every time a new FIU using your services undergoes certification. Because remember, just because you're certified doesn't guarantee that the FIU will be certified, because your certification is for an instance that you put in your staging environment. But ultimately, it is extremely important that the entity that the citizen is going to interact with, even though that entity is subscribing to your service, and you've configured your service or you've deployed your service, it doesn't matter whether it's on-prem, cloud, whatever. Two principles are important. One is that the end entity must get certified, and second, that the certification must happen through an independent agency, which is the empanel certifier, right? Because we are reposing trust in them to be accountable for the process of certification, right? So we put all of this together. We've run through how this will work, and we now have this as a blog entry. And essentially what it means is now all of you, we've got 100 of you here. I don't know how many companies, but if you are in the business of offering the standards implementation, not everybody may be in that business. So maybe it won't be relevant if you are only in the business of offering analytics, and you're really not offering to FIUs software that is compliant with the Revit technical standards. Because certification today the scope is restricted to what the standards are. So if you are not offering implementation of FIU APIs, FIP APIs, or AA APIs, the intermediate certified entity in the current scope of the certification framework may not be relevant. But if you intend to offer that, and I would imagine that many of you would intend to offer that, then becoming an intermediate certified entity hugely reduces the pain for end entities and kind of gives you a leg up in terms of your readiness, right? There are at least three more in the roadmap of what we want to offer as certification services. There are customer experience guidelines, which is to do with how front end. So APIs are all about the back end conversations, front end conversations between FIU applications and AAs. And many of you as TSPs are probably in the game of offering those integrations, whether it's redirections or SDK, library, embedding, etc. There are market guidelines that are evolving, that take care of security. There will be guidelines that take care of even branding, of the AA in front of citizens, etc. All of those will also come within the ambit of the certification service, right? And I think that's just right, because there's too much entropy, too many questions around that. So that will also lead to a potential opportunity for you to be a certified entity. This is the page, before I come to the other two parts, this is the page called Certification Through TSPs that we encourage all of you to read up on. And if there are questions, please, write to us at info, or, reach out to any of us. Happy to explain. But I think this is now ready to be rolled out. In fact, several TSPs, some of the early adopting TSPs who've been closely working on all of these constructs are probably already ready to kind of start flashing their, intermediate certification, and take this concept forward, right? The other two certification services and therefore guidelines, market guidelines that will emerge. Not sure. Again, desire. One is confidential computing. This is to fundamentally solve the data governance problem, which will simply become a big ecosystem issue. There is a group that is working on how to solve the issue of what happens once data reaches the FIU. How do you prevent breaches of purpose limitation, which is part of the consent architecture today in terms of declaration, but you need stronger technical guarantees to actually prevent that being breached. So exciting work is happening here. Sahmati is very much part of those working groups, and I think as more of you join, we will have opportunity to involve more members into this. And this will be a necessary market guideline, and there will be a certification framework for technical guarantees around this. And again, this will be extremely relevant for TSPs, because this then gives you yet another capability that is tied to the whole AI ecosystem concept. And lastly, this is a desire that we want. I think as TSPs, you really are the experts, or should be the experts in this ecosystem. It can no longer be that a handful of us know about AI and the rest of us are fuzzy about it, right? So we wish to launch an AI professional certification, which is meant for business, product, tech executives, professionals working amongst all of you. And the idea is that this communicates that you are AI ready. I mean, you understand it. You can perhaps conduct training workshops as part of your services for your customers, and really yet another leg up in terms of taking on a consulting role, educating them about how AI can be useful, and hopefully that means more business somewhere, to at least some of you, right? That's about benefits. Perhaps very little about obligations. The only obligation was in my first slide. I'll come back to it in the last, about. But let's pause here. Mahesh, how are we looking in terms of questions? Are these UAT environments available now? Yes, the central registry UAT, Sunil, if that's what you mentioned, is absolutely available. Nishscribe, folks from Nishscribe do know. If you meant FIP UAT environments, perhaps that's what you meant. No. We've had very, very preliminary discussions.
You can bring him on the stage if you want, if he wants to ask directly.
Let's try that. I think let's see Sunil. Let's.
Why don't you raise your hand, or I will actually bring you. 1 second.
Somebody loves the idea of seeing Sunil. I saw a heart emoji go up.
Invite to stage.
Oh, several fans of Sunil. Sunil, you need to raise your hand.
Sunil has joined the stage. Superb.
Hi. Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Yeah, okay. Just a sec. Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Sunil.
Yeah, hi. Vamsi, we've interacted. So my question was you are right. My question was relating to the UAT environments, where you mentioned that we are setting up a FIP UAT where as TSP we can test our products. So my question was on that.
Yeah. So Sunil, of course, so there are three kinds of UAT environments that we'll need to stitch together.
Yeah.
Two of them are ready, which is the registry UAT environment and the AA UAT environments. That's the easy part to stitch together into a common platform. The third, which is obviously the meaty one, FIP UAT environments. We've had very early conversations with a couple of banks. We really don't know how successful we will be in having all of the banks put it. But that's really the conversation we want to have, because even the banks themselves as FIUs need this. We've had and several of the TSPs who've been early adopters have actually facilitated bilateral tests between banks, before go live. And so we believe that they understand the problem. We should be able to get there.
Okay. But nice initiative about the certification.
Thanks.
Super. Thanks, Sunil.
Thanks.
Who else, Mahesh?
Let's see. I mean, Q&A, there is something more.
How FIU gets certified? Who's using our TSP solutions? Can you little brief? Yeah. So
Let's bring him on stage if you want.
let's bring Madhu. As deserves to be brought. He's already asked 3 questions.
Yeah, so we have to bring him on the spotlight.
Yeah. Madhu, please raise your hand.
No, I can bring it. There are not too many people. Yeah, please accept it, Madhu. Ah, there he is.
Good evening. Can you able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
We can hear you, Madhu.
Yeah.
We'd like to see you also.
If you are okay.
You charge for showing your face.
I think my camera is off.
No worries, no
Okay,
worries.
no
Just
problem. Yeah, please go ahead.
yeah,
Yep.
so basically, Madhu, the idea is that the mechanics. So the first step is, TransUnion TSP gets certified as an intermediate certified entity. The second step is depending on the certifier. So if you let's say, so we have 3 empanel certifiers. We have August, we have FIM, we have Sumasoft. Depending on who you kind of.
Currently, we are following Aujas.
Okay, so let's say August, the process for an FIU that you bring on board for you to conduct, and that's really the third part. Perhaps I missed saying the third part. So the first part is you need to get pre-certified. Second part is you need to have a pre-negotiated, rate that you offer to FIUs. And third, you should be able to run the certification operations on behalf of the FIU. So that means if they August portal, the self-serve portal, I believe it's called Saksham. They've recently branded it. I believe FIMS is called Trust API, and so on. So their portal will offer a mechanism for either TSPs or let's say the FIU SPOC, some developer that you collaborate with, to run one run of certification on the portal and get the certificate for the FIU. Right, so the mechanics will vary from August to FIM, etc. But what we have spoken to them about is to ensure that the TSPs can take on the operational friction, and they have to kind of adhere to that. That they should not really need that the FIU has to do something and all of that, because the whole friction is that FIUs want to say, look, dear TSP, you take care of everything for me. So they have said that those mechanics will be in place. There is obviously, because these portals differ in design, there is no standardization except to say that TSPs must be able to run it. We encourage you to speak to August, and let's work through any chinks that you find on this.
Thank you.
Okay.
Super, thanks.
Let's get one more. Is there?
Tapan from Finacus. I've spoken to Tapan a lot. Where can we get details on what central registry contains? Will it contain strong and weak identifiers? Great question, Tapan. So one of the Mahesh, I think you need to exit Madhu, but anyway, that's okay.
Okay. Sure.
So we have the immediate response to that is please write to services@sahmati.org.in, and you will get back kind of a actually you will get a GitHub link. I myself forget the improvements we've made. We now have all of these resources on GitHub, including the central registry template, which is a spreadsheet with a glossary. And you just write to services@sahmati.org.in, and one of our volunteers will send you the GitHub link where your developers can look at it. And yes, it does contain the identifier. So every FIP has to declare an identifier or identifiers that it needs consumers to provide. The central registry contains that information, saying that this FIP, has this identifier. For example, today everybody looks at mobile as the identifier. That may change as we go forward, but that info is there as an attribute in the registry.
Okay. One last question.
Sure. Is data on legal checks being considered along with financial data? I think we may need to bring
Okay.
Relly up on stage.
Relly.
I
Okay.
hope I got that name right. I'm not sure I understood fully. Relly, could you please come up onto stage?
One. Okay. They can't come on the stage, okay, because they have logged in from the mobile handset.
Oh, is it really? Sorry
Okay,
about
can you
that.
please send us a mail, possibly?
So I'll try and answer what I think you're saying, really. But if it is not on point, please do just let's chat elsewhere. You can write to us at info@Sahmati and we'll connect. Data on legal checks being considered along with financial data. So first and foremost, what data can be shared in the A is part of the spec, and today only financial data types are listed as schemas. We are often asked if KYC data, for example, is part. The answer is no. I'm guessing your question is on the same lines, that if there is data about legal verifications done on a particular entity, on a particular corporation, and that exists as a repository somewhere, can that also flow through A so that it makes the job easy for you know for maybe technology service providers who are offering some kind of a service? The answer is no. It is, of course, a dream that the ambit of the account aggregator framework will expand to various kinds of data schemas, but we have no reasonable way of knowing if and when that will happen. As of today, it is only financial data. That's correct, Natraj. Thanks. Natraj has gone through the pain. Yeah, so absolutely right. In fact, that's why I think the GitHub community, the Discord community is powerful. What Natraj is doing is really a service to the community by saying this. We really need more of this to happen because even we need to be organized perhaps much better than what we were. But great point. I think all TSPs were still in the journey of building their software, test-driven development. By taking the tests of the plan and incorporating it is very useful.
That's it for now.
Super. Last section. I think we are more or less doing well on time. This won't take long, but let me go back to my deck to now bring it all together. So therefore, assuming now that we've enthused all of you to become TSPs, here's how I would pitch on your behalf to an FIU or an FIP, right? The pitch starts with whatever your current pitch is. I don't know, blank canvas, right? It's your capabilities, everything you've done. You may be analytics, standards implementations, UX, SDKs, design, consultancy, all of that, of course, is there. By becoming a member, you add, and if all of these services are relevant and rolled out for you, you add, three benefits. One, as an intermediate certified entity, you give technical and operational peace of mind to your FIU, FIP for becoming certified and therefore technically ready. That's benefit one. Benefit two, as an AA professional certified company, you communicate that you have the technical knowledge, the know-how and expertise in this nascent ecosystem, right? And we will try and launch this firstly. It is not there yet as a service from Sahmati to its members, but we will also try and keep it current with things like the Personal Data Protection Bill, and data privacy technologies getting standardized through DEPA. All of that we will try and bring in. So we have all of you as an extended body of technical know-how or technocrats, TSPs, right? And the third, of course, is by being an alliance member, you are really the voice of Sahmati to FIUs on what it means. What does an ecosystem even mean? What does it mean to participate in the ecosystem, right? You communicate as a Sahmati member the whole concept and you strengthen the alliance, and really that puts you as in a position of knowledge, not just technically, but of knowledge of how this ecosystem is evolving, and what do FIUs have to do, what do FIPs have to do. All of that, they no longer need to reach out to Sahmati. They will reach out to you. You become the first point of contact and hopefully the last point of contact. We're, of course, there for our members to always join in ad hoc whenever required. But that is how member TSPs become force multipliers, right, for the AA ecosystem. And while we have a Sahmati member logo, we do want brand logos for the intermediate certified entity and the AA Pro to be launched. We will probably launch that shortly, So you've got these symbols that mean something for your own marketing teams and for your customers as well, right? And so really, it boils down to you becoming the single window for onboarding. So the TSP is essentially a single window, and the specific artifacts that you enable is you enable certification through an empanel certifier. So there's a certificate that goes through you and your offering as a single window to the FIP FIU. There is training and implementation, and there is knowledge about participation terms. There is knowledge about the automated dispute resolution and any do's and don'ts that the alliance evolves. All of those, participation terms will also go from you or through you to your end entity. So you therefore become the guide on the ecosystem participation. This is how you become a single window partner. So therefore, be the force. This is the first slide that I showed you. Join, pay us this nominal fee for the next 6 months. Sponsor, volunteer for a bunch of Sahmati programs. Next week, we will roll out a page on what programs are there. But what we've already rolled out is a page which I now want to take you through. And I will request that you please click on this. This is a brand new page that our partners, Parallel HQ, and between Ruchi, Mahesh, and I, we've hustled to get this up and running before today. This effectively does a much better job than my deck of speaking about what it means to become a member. It has a very nice quote by Pramod Rao. Here are the signatories to the participation terms. So not TSPs. In fact, hopefully by 15th October, we will have all of your logos up here, because we now need TSPs to become members, right? But signatories to our participation terms, which is one step of becoming a member, we already have several of these large organizations already as signatories, right? And we believe this will grow from strength to strength. This is the governance structure I spoke about. These are all the benefits, right? So the process for membership, first and foremost, click on Become a Member. You will find a membership form. This is only for TSPs. Mind you, this is not for your customers yet. We will roll out a similar process for end FIUs, FIPs to become members, but you guys are first. So fill out this form, make the payment of 50,000 towards a 6-month membership. Email us at membership@Sahmati with that transaction reference number, and we will communicate back with a kit which will have your membership ID, the invoice receipt, and essentially bunch of links that you can start using, community links, etc. Equally important, or perhaps even more, please do indicate your interest and happiness in supporting a Sahmati program. Now, what is a Sahmati program? It is a bunch of, I think there are at least 8 to 10 different initiatives which involve, spending some money, right? It involves building some tech assets. It involves getting the time from volunteers outside to build out design documents, thought processes, etc., right? So we need sponsorship, and sponsorship will be obviously in part, it is opt-in, it is, whatever you can provide, right? Or we also need volunteering. Obviously, we will have to decide what kind of skill we need for each program, but please do indicate your interest, and hopefully by 15th October, as you finish signing up the member, we will interact with all of you who sign up as members for further details on the programs and actually kickstart our volunteer stuff. We have a volunteer program, and so volunteers will start getting a nice little badge, which I think is useful because you're contributing something for the ecosystem. You should be proud to declare that. And we also have what's called a Volunteer Hall of Fame, which is an annual thing. So we actually did the Volunteer Hall of Fame in 2020. And so there were several folks that actually shared their expertise with us in 2020. and we like to kind of call them out. Just name them. None of these people are looking for any glory or whatever, but it's just a way to say thank you. We have many new faces this year, and we hope to get many more faces, in the next 15 days from several of you. And by the end of this year, this we typically did in December, so we'll probably do a December thing. We will have a Hall of Fame for 2021, right? Calling out our thanks to several of you who do that. So with that, I think we are pretty much done, and you can find us at several of these locations. The brand new locations is github.com/Sahmati and the sahmati.org.in/community, which is the Discord server. You can, of course, write to us at info, LinkedIn, Twitter, watch our YouTube videos. We have demo videos now there up, and so on and so forth. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Especially on a Friday evening to see, this kind of thing, right? Response. I mean, I think we had almost 100 of them, attending. Thank you, Vamsi, for the detailed coverage. Thank you, Ruchi. And, we all look forward to, all of your support. You kindly become members soon, you volunteer, and, work with us to actually grow this ecosystem. And periodically, I think it'll be good, maybe every every quarter we can always have a TSP meet, and if we need to have sessions which have to be extremely technical in nature, do let us know. We'll be very happy to facilitate that. And I think now it becomes important for the TSPs to also choose to form the steering committee, etc. So you will actually hear from us on how you all will be able to to form a group and decide on the steering group. And once that group is formed, you'll have to choose a from your group who will be part of the governing council. So with that, I think the session ends. So how about Vamsi, anything else we had? Great.
No, thanks. Thanks to everybody who stayed on. And
also come on stage, please, Ruchi. And
Ruchi, please come. Wonderful. So, guys, this is a team. We really think you guys are going to be super duper rocket launchers. So all the best to all of you, and we are there.
Do send us your feedback. We would want to hear on how we can improve this.
Absolutely.
So you have to see it as this entire thing is organized for you, by you. We are only the organizers. So somebody like me who's sitting in the backstage and responding to queries, but it is actually your event. Okay, guys, have a good weekend.
Bye, guys.
Okay, they can actually go to the lounge, I think, if they want to, right? I don't know how to do that. I think the end session.
Yeah.
Ruchi is on mute, as usual.
We can't hear you, Ruchi, at all.
We can't hear you.
People are clapping the fact that they can't hear some of us.
Okay, shall I session? How about shall I end session? Right? Go to the lounge.
You can end the session, Mahesh.